Sarah Bennett's hands shook as she raised the rifle barrel pointed steady at the 5 riders, circling her property like wolves. Her father's grave wasn't even cold, fresh dirt, no marker, just a mound of Wyoming earth behind the cabin. The children huddled behind her skirts, silent with terror they'd learned too young. "You got till sundown," the lead rider called. His boss wanted this land. His boss always got what he wanted. Sarah pulled back the hammer. "Then you better ride fast. Sundown's 4 hours away, and I got plenty of bullets." Before we see if Sarah survives this day, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and stay till the end. This story goes places you won't expect. And comment your city below so I can see how far Sarah's fight travels across the world. Now, let's go back to where this all started. 3 months earlier, May 1883. The sound that woke Sarah wasn't thunder. It was hooves too many moving too fast. She rolled from bed, already reaching for her father's rifle, before her feet hit the cold floor. Beside her, Callie stirred. "Stay down," Sarah whispered. She moved to the window, peered through the gap in the oiled paper. Dawn light barely touched the horizon, but she counted them, easy 6 riders, coming hard from the direction of the Crawford Ranch. Her stomach dropped. "Ethan?" She kept her voice low, steady. "Get Jamie into the root cellar, now." Her 14-year-old brother appeared in the doorway, already dressed, already knowing. He'd learned the same as her, sleep light, wake ready, trust nothing. He scooped up their youngest brother without question and moved. The riders pulled up 20 yards from the cabin. Sarah stepped onto the porch, rifle loose in her hands, not aimed, but ready. "Little early for social calls, Hutch." Lucas Hutchinson swung down from his horse. He'd worked for her father once, back before the money got better on the Crawford spread. He had the decency to remove his hat. "Miss Sarah, I got a message from Mr. Clayton Crawford." "I ain't interested in messages from Clayton Crawford." "Maybe you ought to be." Another rider spoke, younger, meaner. Marcus Crawford, the boss's second son. He stayed mounted, grinning like he'd already won something. "My father's filed a claim challenge on this property. You got 30 days to vacate or prove ownership in territorial court." The words hit harder than fists. Sarah forced herself to breathe, to think. "My father filed proper claim in 1879. We got papers." "You got incomplete papers." Marcus leaned forward in his saddle. "Your father died before finishing the process. That makes this land available for claim. My father's filing today." "The hell he is." Sarah's hands tightened on the rifle. "We lived here 4 years, built everything you see. That counts for something." "Counts for nothing without proper documentation." Marcus smiled wider. "But my father's a generous man. He's authorized me to offer $500 for whatever improvements you made. Fair price for a cabin and barn that'll be torn down anyway." "Get off my land." "It ain't your land, sweetheart, that's the point." Marcus gathered his reins. 30 days. Then the sheriff comes and you leave whether you want to or not. Take the money while you can." Hutch stepped forward, separate from the others. "Miss Sarah, listen." "You finished, Hutch." Sarah cut him off. "Or you got more threats to deliver for your boss." Something crossed Hutch's weathered face. Shame, maybe. He put his hat back on, mounted up without another word. The riders turned, but Marcus paused. "Your daddy was a fool trying to make it alone out here. Don't be a bigger fool by thinking you can do better." His eyes traveled over the cabin, dismissive. 30 days. Use them to pack." They rode off. Sarah stood on that porch until the dust settled, until her hands stopped shaking, until she was sure the children wouldn't see her cry. Then she went inside and started planning war. Ethan emerged from the root cellar with Jamie clinging to his back like a burr. Callie sat at the table, her face set in that stubborn expression Sarah knew too well, the one that meant she was about to argue. "We ain't leaving." Callie's voice cracked on the last word. "Mama and Daddy are buried here." "I know. So what do we do?" Ethan set Jamie down, but the 6-year-old wouldn't release his grip on their brother's shirt. "How do we fight this?" Sarah moved to the shelf where her father had kept his important papers. She pulled down the leather folder, spread its contents on the table. Homestead claim application partial. Surveyor's notes. Receipt for filing fees. Letter of intent. Pieces of a process her father meant to finish before the horse threw him, before his neck broke, before everything changed. We need a lawyer. She stared at papers that might as well have been written in another language. Someone who understands territorial law. We got $43. Ethan's voice was flat. That ain't enough for a lawyer. Then we find someone who'll take payment later. Nobody works that way. Then we find nobody. Sarah gathered the papers, careful with the brittle edges. I'm riding to town. You watch the children. Sarah. I ain't asking your permission, Ethan. She met her brother's eyes. I'm asking you to trust me. He wanted to argue. She saw it in the set of his jaw, the frustration of being 14 and male and treated like a child. But he nodded. Be back by dark. I will. She saddled her father's horse. Her horse now, she supposed, though ownership felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. The mare was 16 years old, sway-backed and slow. But she'd get Sarah to Cartwright and back before nightfall. The ride gave her time to think. Time to calculate what little they had against what they needed. Time to realize how completely they'd lost before the fight even started. Her father had been a dreamer. Good man, hard worker, but a dreamer. He'd believed in the promise of the Homestead Act, that if you worked land improved, it lived on it, it became yours. He'd believed in fairness and justice and the basic decency of systems designed to help working people. Sarah knew better. She'd seen homesteaders pushed off their claims by men with better lawyers and deeper pockets. She'd watched families torn apart when the land office ruled against them. She understood what Ethan didn't, that this fight was over before it started, unless she found some angle, some leverage, some miracle. Cartwright appeared on the horizon around noon, 20 buildings pretending to be a town, but it was all they had. Sarah rode straight to the land office, a square structure that smelled like dust and old paper and broken promises. The clerk looked up from his desk when she entered. Young, maybe 25, with ink stains on his fingers, and pity in his eyes when he recognized her. Miss Bennett, I'm sorry about your father. Thank you. Sarah set the leather folder on the desk. I need to know how to complete his homestead claim. The clerk, Williams, his name was opened the folder. His expression grew more troubled with each page he examined. Miss Bennett, this is quite incomplete. I know. Tell me what's missing. Williams pulled out a form, began marking items with his pencil. Final survey verification. Proof of continuous occupation. Affidavit of improvements. Declaration of intent to establish permanent residence. Filing fee for final patent. He looked up. And that's assuming the preliminary claim was properly recorded, which... He shuffled papers. I'm not seeing evidence of. My father paid the filing fee. There's a receipt. For preliminary registration, yes. But preliminary registration isn't a claim. It's an intent to claim. Your father needed to return within 6 months to file the actual homestead application, according to these dates. Williams checked the receipt again. That deadline passed 3 years ago. The floor tilted under Sarah's feet. What are you saying? I'm saying your father's preliminary registration expired. Legally, you're occupying unclaimed land. But we built a cabin. We plowed fields. We lived there 4 years. I understand, Miss Bennett. I do. Williams's voice gentled. But the law is clear. Without proper filing, occupation doesn't establish ownership. I'm truly sorry. Sarah gripped the edge of the desk. There must be something. Some process, some appeal. There is. You could file a new homestead claim yourself. Hope flared, brief and bright. Then that's what I'll do. Miss Bennett. Williams set down his pencil. You're an unmarried woman. Under territorial law, you can't be designated as head of household. You'd need a male relative to file on your behalf. I got a brother. How old? 14. Williams shook his head. Minimum age is 21. I'm sorry. The law is. The law isn't written for situations like yours. Sarah felt something break inside her. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet crack like ice over a frozen river. How long do I have? If Clayton Crawford's filed a challenge, you'll receive official notice within the week. After that, 30 days until the hearing. And if I can't prove ownership? Williams didn't answer, which was answer enough. Sarah gathered her papers with numb fingers. Thank you for your time. Miss Bennett, wait. Williams stood. There's a lawyer in town. Isaiah Harrison. He's helped homesteaders before. Maybe he can find something I'm missing. I got $43. Talk to him anyway. Tell him I sent you. Williams wrote an address on a scrap of paper. He's a good man. He'll listen at least. Sarah took the paper, though hope felt like a luxury she couldn't afford twice in one day. Isaiah Harrison's office occupied the second floor above a dry goods store. Sarah climbed the narrow stairs, knocked on a door badly in need of paint. Come. She entered a space barely large enough for a desk, 2 chairs, and shelves overflowing with legal books. The man behind the desk looked up, 45, maybe 50. Black with silver threading his hair and eyes that had seen too much disappointment. Mr. Harrison. That's right. He stood, gestured to the empty chair. What can I do for you? Sarah spread her father's papers on his desk just as she'd done at the land office. Williams at the land office said you might help. Clayton Crawford's filed a claim challenge against my property. I got 30 days to prove ownership. Williams says I can't, but I'm asking anyway. Harrison examined the papers with the care they deserved, reading every line, checking every date, frowning at what wasn't there more than what was. Finally, he set them down. Williams is right. Williams is, legally you can't prove ownership. Your father's claim expired years ago. You're occupying unclaimed land. So I lose. In a fair court, yes. Harrison leaned back in his chair. But territorial courts ain't always fair. Sometimes they rule on spirit of the law instead of letter. Sometimes judges care about justice more than procedure. He paused. Not often, but sometimes. What would it take to win a miracle? Harrison tapped the papers. But to fight evidence of continuous occupation, testimony from neighbors confirming your family's presence, documentation of improvements receipts for materials, witness statements about construction, proof your father intended to establish a permanent home, not just squat on valuable land. We can get that. And about $300 for my retainer. Sarah's hands clenched in her lap. I got 43. I know. Harrison's voice was gentle. I'm sorry, Miss Bennett. I wish I could work for free, but I got expenses same as anybody. Law books ain't cheap, and neither is filing fees. Sarah stood. Thank you for your time. Miss Bennett. Harrison rose as well. If you can gather that evidence, the testimony, the receipts, the documentation, bring it back to me. If it's strong enough, we'll talk about payment plans. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and left before he could see her cry. The ride home took longer than it should have. Sarah stopped by the creek where her father used to water the cattle they'd sold after his death, sat on a rock and let herself break down where no one could see. 4 years of work. 4 years of hope. 4 years of believing in a promise that turned out to be words on paper, nothing more. She thought about that $500 Marcus Crawford had offered. Thought about how far it might take them, maybe back east, maybe to family who hadn't wanted them when her father was alive, but might take pity on orphans. Thought about admitting defeat while she still had the dignity to choose surrender. Then she thought about Callie, who wanted to be a doctor in a world that wouldn't let her. About Jamie, still afraid of horses, because the last time he saw his father, it was the horse that killed him. About Ethan trying so hard to be a man when he should still be allowed to be a boy. She thought about her mother who'd taught school in that cabin, who'd believed education mattered even on the frontier. About her father who'd broken his back building something to pass down to his children. About the graves behind the cabin and what it would mean to walk away from them. Sarah stood, wiped her face, mounted her horse. Defeat could wait one more day. Kog. She rode into the yard as the sun touched the western peaks. Ethan met her at the barn, took the horse without asking questions, just looked at her face and understood. Inside, Callie had supper-ready beans and cornbread, same as always. They ate in silence until Jamie couldn't stand it anymore. "Are we leaving?" "No." Sarah's voice came out harder than she meant. "We ain't leaving. But if the law says, the law's wrong." She met her siblings' eyes, each in turn. "I know what you're thinking, that we should take the money and go, that fighting this is foolish. Maybe it is, but this is our home. Mama and Daddy are buried here. I ain't walking away without trying everything." "What can we try?" Ethan's voice carried the weight of too much responsibility. "You said we need a lawyer. We ain't got money for a lawyer." "Then we'll defend ourselves." "Sarah." "I ain't debating this, Ethan." She pushed back from the table. "Tomorrow we start gathering evidence. We'll visit every neighbor, get statements about how long we've been here. We'll make a list of every improvement Daddy made, every board he nailed, every fence post he set. We'll document everything, and we'll present it to that judge, and we'll make him see that law or no law, this land is ours." Callie's voice came quiet but firm. "And if he doesn't see it?" Sarah looked at her sister, 11 years old, fierce and frightened in equal measure. "Then we'll lose, knowing we fought. But we ain't giving up without making them work for it." Later, after the children slept, Sarah sat on the porch and stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, Clayton Crawford was planning how to take everything she had left. Somewhere his lawyers were preparing arguments she couldn't counter. Somewhere a judge was probably already deciding in favor of the man with money and power. But tomorrow, she'd start fighting anyway. Because surrender wasn't in her blood, and neither was sense. The next week passed in a blur of desperate activity. Sarah rode to every neighboring homestead within 10 miles. Most offered sympathy, but nothing else. They had their own struggles, their own fears that Crawford might come for them next. A few agreed to testify: Samuel and Ruth Washington, a black couple who'd claimed land 2 miles south. Swift Hawk, who ran the trading post and remembered when Sarah's father first arrived. Old Mrs. McKenna, whose husband had died the same winter Sarah's mother passed. Not much, but something. Ethan compiled a list of improvements, measuring the cabin, counting fence posts, documenting the well her father had dug by hand. Callie practiced reading from their mother's school books, preparing to testify about the education they'd received. Jamie drew pictures of the cabin, of the barn, of the graves, childish art that might convince a judge that home meant more than paperwork. On the 8th day, the official notice arrived. Sarah signed for it with steady hands, waited until the marshal's deputy rode away, then opened the envelope. Territory of Wyoming vs. Sarah Bennett. Hearing scheduled June 15, 1883. Territorial Courthouse, Cheyenne. Bring all documentation supporting your claim to the property described as June 15th, 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to prepare a defense against lawyers and money, and a system designed to favor men exactly like Clayton Crawford. Sarah folded the notice, tucked it in her father's Bible, and went back to work. 2 weeks before the hearing, on a Tuesday that started like any other, Sarah was mending fence when she heard the horse. She looked up, hand moving automatically to the rifle she'd started carrying everywhere. But this wasn't Crawford's men, just one rider moving slow, no threat in his posture. He was tall, she noticed as he approached. Maybe 30, maybe a year past. Dark hair, good clothes, riding a horse worth more than everything Sarah owned combined. He stopped a respectful distance from where she worked, removed his hat. "Ma'am, name's Nathaniel Crawford. I'm looking for Sarah Bennett." The name hit like a fist. Crawford. She gripped the fence post to keep her hands from shaking. "I'm Sarah Bennett." Pleased to meet you, ma'am. His voice was different from Marcus's quieter, careful. I apologize for the intrusion. I was hoping we could talk. If you're here to deliver more threats. I ain't. He raised one hand, showing he meant no harm. I'm here because I found out what my father's doing and I want to help. Sarah laughed short and bitter. Help? That's rich. I understand your skepticism, Miss Bennett. I do. But I'm asking you to hear me out. Nathaniel gestured to the ground. May I dismount? I'd rather not have this conversation shouting. Every instinct screamed danger, but curiosity, or maybe desperation, made Sarah nod. Nathaniel swung down with easy grace, left his horse ground-tied, walked closer, but not too close. Up close, she could see the resemblance to Marcus, same blue eyes, same strong jaw. But where Marcus smiled like a predator, Nathaniel's expression carried something else. Guilt, maybe. Or shame. I didn't know about the claim challenge until last week, he said. My father handles most of the ranch's legal business. When I found out, he stopped, seemed to struggle with words. What he's doing ain't right, Miss Bennett, and I aim to help you stop him. Why? Sarah's voice came out flat, exhausted. Why would you help me against your own father? Because my mother raised me to care about justice more than property. Nathaniel met her eyes. Because I'm tired of watching my father destroy families to add another section to his empire. Because the ranch you're trying to keep used to belong to a man named Thomas Gray, and 5 years ago, my father did to him exactly what he's doing to you now. Thomas Gray. Good man, hard worker, had a wife and 2 daughters. His homestead claim had a documentation error, wrong signature on one form. My father's lawyers found it filed a challenge won in court. Gray's family lost everything. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He hung himself a month later, left a note saying he couldn't face his wife after failing to protect what he'd built. The words settled heavy in the space between them. Sarah felt sick. Your father killed him. The law killed him. My father just used the law as a weapon. Nathaniel pulled papers from his coat. This is everything I could copy from my father's legal files. His strategy, his precedents, the arguments his lawyers plan to use. It ain't much, but it might help your attorney prepare. I don't have an attorney. What? Nathaniel's composure cracked. Miss Bennett, you can't defend yourself against... I know what I can't do. Sarah's voice rose. I know I got no chance. I know I'm gonna lose. But I can't afford a lawyer, and I ain't gonna stop fighting just because the fight's hopeless. Nathaniel stared at her, something shifting in his expression. How much would it take for Isaiah Harrison's retainer? You know Isaiah Harrison. Everyone knows Isaiah. He's the best homestead lawyer in the territory. Nathaniel reached for his billfold. How much does he need? Put that away. Sarah's voice went cold. I don't want your money. This ain't charity. It's exactly charity. You feeling guilty about your daddy's sins? Don't make us your responsibility. She turned back to the fence, gripped the wire hard enough to cut her palm. I appreciate the warning, Mr. Crawford, but I don't need your help. You don't need it, or you don't want it? Sarah didn't answer. Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, my mother used to say that pride was a luxury poor folks couldn't afford. That accepting help when you needed it wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Your mother sounds like she never had to choose between her pride and her survival. Actually, she did. Nathaniel's voice softened. She was a school teacher when my father met her. Orphan, no family, teaching children for pennies because it was all she could get. My father proposed, she refused 3 times because she didn't want to be seen as marrying for money. Finally, he asked her, Is your pride worth more than the good you could do with resources to do it? She said yes to the 4th proposal. Despite herself, Sarah felt something ease slightly. She sounds like a smart woman. She was the smartest woman I ever knew. Nathaniel tucked his billfold away. She died 5 years ago. Pneumonia. After that, my father changed, became harder. started seeing land as legacy instead of people as neighbors. He met Sarah's eyes again. She would have hated what he's doing to you, and she would have wanted me to help. Why? Sarah heard the rawness in her own voice. Why do you care? You don't know me. Because if I don't help you, I'm complicit in what he does. Because I'm tired of being ashamed of my family name. Because... He stopped, seemed to make a decision. Because my mother taught me that character shows itself in how we treat people who can't offer us anything in return. You can't offer me anything, Miss Bennet. But helping you lets me offer myself something proof that I'm not my father. The words hung between them, honest in a way Sarah hadn't expected. She studied this man who'd ridden onto her property uninvited, who carried his father's name, but seemed determined not to carry his sins. Every rational bone in her body said to send him away, trust nothing, expect betrayal. But rational had never gotten her very far. $300, Sarah said finally. That's what Isaiah Harrison needs for his retainer, plus filing fees plus expenses. Probably $500 total by the time it's done. Done. Nathaniel pulled out his billfold again. This time Sarah didn't stop him. He counted out bills more money than Sarah had seen in one place in her entire life and held them out. This is a loan, she said, not a gift. When we win, when the land's secure, I'll pay you back. If you win. Nathaniel pressed the money into her hand. When you lose, this is a gift, and you don't owe me anything except the knowledge you fought with everything you had. We ain't gonna lose. I hope you're right, Miss Bennet. He remounted his horse, settled his hat. I'll be at the hearing. My testimony might help the son of the challenger speaking against his father carries weight. And I know my father's strategy. That gives us an advantage. Us. Sarah heard the word, but couldn't quite process it. You're testifying for me. Against my father's claim. Yes. He'll disinherit you. Probably. Nathaniel gathered his reins. But like I said, some things matter more than money. Your fight happens to be one of them. He rode off before Sarah could respond, leaving her standing in her yard with $500 in cash and no idea what to make of Nathaniel Crawford. That evening, Sarah made the ride to Isaiah Harrison's office again. This time, she brought payment. Harrison took the money with surprise evident on his face. Where did you? Don't ask. Sarah set the legal papers Nathaniel had given her on his desk. Crawford's son brought these. His father's strategy, his precedents, everything. Harrison examined the papers, his expression growing more troubled with each page. Miss Bennet, do you understand what you're holding? Strategy papers. These are confidential attorney work product. If Clayton Crawford's lawyers find out his son gave these to you, Nathaniel could face disbarment charges if he ever tries to practice law. At minimum, he's destroyed his relationship with his father. Harrison looked up. That's one hell of a risk to take for a woman he just met. I know. Sarah's voice came out quieter than she intended. I told him not to. But you took the money anyway. I ain't got the luxury of turning down help just because it costs the giver too much. My siblings need this land. They need security, if Nathaniel Crawford wants to burn his bridges to give us a chance. She met Harrison's eyes. I'm gonna take that chance. Harrison nodded slowly. Then let's make sure his sacrifice matters. Sit down, Miss Bennet. We got work to do. They worked until midnight, Harrison asking questions, Sarah answering both of them, building the case that might save her family's home. It wasn't much. It wasn't enough. But it was more than Sarah had yesterday, and in her situation, more was everything. When she finally rode home exhausted, but oddly hopeful, she found Ethan waiting on the porch. Who was he? Her brother's voice carried suspicion. The Crawford that came by earlier. The one trying to help us instead of hurt us. There's a difference. Maybe. Sarah dismounted, led her horse to the barn. Maybe not. But I got a lawyer now, and evidence and a fighting chance. That's more than we had this morning. Ethan followed her, helped with the horse. Sarah, be careful. Men like that, men with money, They don't help people like us without wanting something back. I know. Do you? Ethan's voice went sharp with worry. Because from where I'm standing, you're trusting awful fast. I ain't trusting. Sarah faced her brother in the darkness. I'm calculating. We needed a miracle, Ethan. Today, one showed up wearing expensive clothes and riding a fancy horse. Maybe it's real, maybe it's a trick, but we were losing for certain yesterday. Today we got a chance. I'll take a chance over certain defeat any day. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then, just don't let him break your heart while he's saving our home. The words hit harder than they should have. Sarah pushed past her brother, headed for the cabin, didn't let him see how much that possibility already scared her. In the Crawford Ranch house 15 miles north, Nathaniel sat across from his father in a study that smelled like leather and whiskey and old anger. You did what? Clayton Crawford's voice stayed calm, which was somehow worse than shouting. I gave Sarah Bennett money for a lawyer. Nathaniel met his father's eyes. And copies of your legal strategy. You're a fool. Maybe, but I'm a fool who can sleep at night. Clayton stood, moved to the window, stared out at the empire he'd built. That land has water rights we need. The girl can't possibly win even with a lawyer. All you've done is prolong the inevitable and made yourself look weak. I don't care how I look. You should. Clayton turned and Nathaniel saw something he'd never seen before in his father's face. Disappointment sharper than anger. Your mother wanted you to be a man of principle. But she also wanted you to be smart enough to know when principles were luxuries you couldn't afford. That Bennett girl is going to lose son, and when she does, you'll have accomplished nothing except alienating your family. Then I'll have accomplished proving I'm not you. The words hung in the air like gun smoke. Clayton's expression went cold. Get out. You're not welcome at this table until you remember where your loyalty belongs. My loyalty belongs to justice, not blood. Nathaniel stood. Mother understood that. I'm sorry you don't. He left his father's house, mounted his horse, rode into the night with no particular destination in mind. Just away from the empire that felt more like a prison with each passing year. He thought about Sarah Bennett, standing in her yard with pride and fear wearing on her face. Thought about the way she'd tried to refuse his help even knowing she desperately needed it. Thought about the fire in her eyes when she'd said, "We ain't gonna lose." Nathaniel had met plenty of women, beautiful women, educated women, women his father deemed suitable matches. But he'd never met anyone like Sarah, someone fighting with everything she had for something that mattered more than herself. Something about that called to a part of him he'd thought long dead. He rode toward town, toward Isaiah Harrison's office, toward the fight that would define whether he was his father's son or his mother's. Toward Sarah Bennett, who didn't want his help but needed it anyway. Toward a future where maybe, just maybe, doing the right thing would cost him everything, but give him something worth having in return. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human struggles. But Nathaniel Crawford, for the first time in years, felt like he was moving toward something, instead of just away from his father's shadow. 3 weeks until the hearing. 3 weeks to build a case against impossible odds. 3 weeks until Sarah Bennett either kept her home or lost everything. And Nathaniel Crawford would stand beside her whatever came. Because his mother was right. Character showed itself in how you treated people who couldn't offer anything in return. Sarah Bennett couldn't offer him anything. But maybe that was exactly why helping her mattered most. The morning after Nathaniel's visit, Sarah woke to find him sitting on her porch like he belonged there. What are you doing here? He looked up from the papers spread across his lap. Harrison sent word. We need to prepare your testimony. Figured I'd save you the ride to town. Sarah stepped outside, still braiding her hair. You can't just show up uninvited. I knocked. Your brother let me in. Ethan. Sarah's voice carried warning toward the cabin interior. Her brother appeared in the doorway, defiant. He brought breakfast, real bacon, Miss Sarah. When's the last time we had bacon? The smell hit her, then meat frying, coffee brewing. Callie stood at the stove looking guilty and hungry in equal measure. Jamie sat at the table already eating like the world might end before his next meal. "You're bribing my family with food." "I'm feeding people who need feeding." Nathaniel gestured to the papers. "Harrison's case relies on proving continuous occupation and genuine intent to establish a permanent home. That means we need to document every detail of your family's life here. Every improvement your father made, every crop planted, every—" "I know what it means. I read the papers." "Then you know we got 2 weeks to build a defense against lawyers who've been preparing for months." Nathaniel's voice stayed level patient. "I ain't trying to take over, Miss Bennett. I'm trying to help." Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to send him away, maintain the distance that kept her safe from hoping too much. But Ethan was right. When had they last eaten real bacon? And Nathaniel was offering more than food. He was offering knowledge resources, the kind of advantage people like her never got. "Fine, but this is my fight. You're helping, not leading." "Yes, ma'am." Something that might have been a smile crossed his face. "Wouldn't dream of anything else." They worked through breakfast, Nathaniel asking questions Sarah didn't always have answers to. When had her father dug the well? What materials had he used for the cabin's foundation? Could she document purchases from local merchants? "I don't know." Sarah's frustration grew with each admission of ignorance. "My father handled the business. I handled the children. Then we'll work with what you do know." Nathaniel made notes in careful handwriting. "You know when your family arrived. You know what the land looked like then versus now. You know your father's daily routine, the improvements he prioritized, his relationships with neighbors. That's evidence, Miss Bennett. Maybe not the kind lawyers prefer, but it's truth. Sometimes that matters." "Not in territorial court?" "Maybe not, but it's all we got, so we make it enough." Callie interrupted from the stove. "Mr. Crawford, you want more coffee?" "Thank you, Miss Callie. And it's Nathaniel. Mr. Crawford's my father." "You don't like being called Mr. Crawford." Callie refilled his cup, curious in the way of 11-year-olds. "I don't like being confused with my father." Nathaniel's voice carried an edge Sarah hadn't heard before. "We're very different men." "But you got his name." "I do. Doesn't mean I got to carry his character along with it." Jamie spoke up, mouthful of bacon. "My daddy said a man makes his own name no matter what he's born with." Nathaniel's expression softened. "Your daddy was smart." "He was the smartest." Jamie's voice went small. "Till the horse threw him." The cabin went quiet. Sarah saw Nathaniel's hands still on his papers, saw him choosing his next words with care. "I lost my mother 5 years back," he said finally. "Pneumonia took her in 3 days. I kept thinking if I'd noticed sooner, gotten the doctor faster, done something different." He stopped. "Took me a long time to understand that death ain't always preventable. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, and there ain't nobody to blame." Jamie stared at him, processing this adult honesty. "You miss her?" "Every single day." "Me too. My daddy, I mean." "I know you do, son." Sarah felt something shift in her chest. This wealthy rancher's son, sitting at their rough table talking to her traumatized little brother like he mattered, it complicated the careful distance she'd been trying to maintain. Ethan cleared his throat. "Miss Sarah, if you're done with questions, I got fence needs mending." "Go on." Sarah watched her brother escape outside, carrying tension he wouldn't name. She understood it, fear that accepting help meant owing debts they couldn't repay. Fear that trusting strangers led to betrayal. She felt it too. "Your brother doesn't trust me." Nathaniel stated it as fact, not complaint. "Can you blame him?" "No, ma'am. If I was him, I wouldn't trust me either." Nathaniel gathered his papers. "Rich man's son showing up with money and promises. That's how people like us take advantage of people like you." People like us. People with power. People who've never had to choose between pride and survival, dignity and necessity. He met her eyes. "I understand why you're suspicious, Miss Bennett. I'm asking you to trust me anyway because, suspicious or not, you need help. And I'm offering it with no strings attached, except one that you let me prove I ain't my father." Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to find the trap she knew had to be there, but all she said was, "Why does it matter so much, proving you're different from him?" Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment. "Because I watched him destroy Thomas Gray's family. Watched that man lose everything because my father wanted water rights. Watched Gray hang himself because he couldn't face his wife after failing to protect what he'd built." His voice went rough. "I did nothing. Told myself it was legal. Told myself I couldn't interfere in my father's business. Told myself lies so I could sleep at night. That wasn't your fault. It was my silence. Silence is complicity, Miss Bennett. I learned that too late to help Gray, but I ain't making the same mistake twice." The rawness in his voice hit Sarah harder than she expected. This wasn't nobility or charity. This was guilt, seeking redemption. That at least she could understand. "All right." She started clearing breakfast dishes. "You want to help? Then help me finish documenting improvements. Every nail my father drove, every board he cut. We'll make a list so detailed that Judge will have to acknowledge what we built here." "Yes, ma'am." Nathaniel rolled up his sleeves. "Where do we start?" They spent the next 3 days in exhausting detail work. Measuring the cabin, counting fence posts, documenting the well's depth. Nathaniel wrote everything in his careful hand, while Sarah provided measurements, and Ethan verified their accuracy with the stubborn precision of a boy trying to prove he mattered. On the 3rd day, Isaiah Harrison rode out to review their progress. He spread their documentation across Sarah's table, examined it with a lawyer's critical eye. "This is good work," Harrison said finally. "Real good. It shows clear intent to establish permanent residence, significant investment in improvements, continuous occupation. Problem is, it ain't enough." Sarah cut him off. "I know. It ain't enough alone," Harrison corrected. "But combined with testimony from neighbors, with your personal account of daily life here, with Nathaniel's testimony about his father's pattern of targeting vulnerable homesteaders." He paused. "We got maybe a 30% chance." 30%. The number settled like a stone in Sarah's stomach. "That's all. That's 30% more than you had a week ago." Harrison's voice gentled. "Miss Bennett, I ain't gonna lie to you. The law favors property owners with proper documentation. Your father's failure to complete the filing process puts you at a severe disadvantage. But juries, there ain't a jury in territorial claim challenges." "No, but there's a judge, and Judge Blackwood, for all his faults, occasionally cares about justice over procedure." Harrison gathered the papers. "I've won cases with worse odds. Can't promise victory, but I can promise a real fight." After Harrison left, Sarah found Nathaniel checking the barn's foundation. He worked with the easy competence of someone who'd done physical labor despite his wealth, and she caught herself watching the way he moved, efficient, careful, respectful of what her father had built. "You don't have to do this." The words came out before she could stop them. "The manual labor, I mean. You already paid for the lawyer." "I know." Nathaniel didn't stop working. "But I figure if I'm going to testify about improvements your family made, I ought to understand what those improvements took. Your father built this with his hands, Miss Bennett. That deserves respect. You're awful different from your brother. Marcus takes after our father, I take after our mother." He straightened, wiped sweat from his forehead. "She used to say that character isn't what you inherit, it's what you choose to build. I'm trying to build something worth having. By helping us. By doing what's right. Helping you just happens to be what's right at the moment." Sarah moved closer, examined the foundation work he'd been documenting. "Your father's gonna disown you for this. You know that." "Probably." "Don't that scare you? Losing everything?" "What's everything?" Nathaniel met her eyes. "Money I didn't earn, land my father acquired by destroying families, a legacy built on legal theft." He shook his head. That ain't everything, Miss Bennett. That's just expensive nothing. Easy to say when you've always had money. You're right. I can't know what it's like to worry about survival. Can't know what it's like to go to bed hungry or wake up scared you'll lose your home. His voice stayed level. But I know what it's like to have everything and feel empty. I know what it's like to wake up ashamed of your family name. I know what it's like to realize money can't buy the things that actually matter. What things? Purpose, meaning, the knowledge you did something worth doing. He gestured to the cabin, the barn, the land. You got more wealth here than my father's entire empire, Miss Bennett. You got family that loves you, land you earned through sweat, a home built by people who cared about something more than profit. That's real wealth. Everything else is just numbers in a bank. Sarah didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process a rich man envying her poverty. So she just nodded and went back to work. That evening, while Nathaniel was showing Jamie how to properly care for a saddle, Marcus Crawford rode into the yard with 3 of his father's men. Sarah grabbed the rifle. Ethan appeared beside her, his father's pistol held with shaking hands. But Marcus just sat his horse grinning like he'd already won something. Well, well, big brother's playing farmer. Marcus's voice dripped contempt. Father's wondering when you're coming home, Nate, or if you're planning to move in with your new charity project. Nathaniel stood slowly, put himself between Marcus and the cabin. Ride back home, Marcus. This ain't your concern. Father's business is my concern, especially when you're actively working against him. Marcus's eyes moved to Sarah. Miss Bennett, I got a new offer from my father. $750. More than generous for property you're gonna lose anyway. No. Sarah's voice stayed steady despite her hammering heart. You sure? Because that offer expires today. After that you get nothing except a legal battle that'll bankrupt you. Marcus leaned forward in his saddle. Take the money, sweetheart. It's more than you deserve. I said no. Your funeral. Marcus gathered his reins. Nate, you coming home, or you throwing away your inheritance for some stubborn girl who can't even keep her own family fed? Watch your mouth. Nathaniel's voice went cold. And tell Father I'm exactly where I choose to be. Sleeping in their barn real noble. Marcus laughed. Mother would be so proud. Mother would be ashamed of what Father's become. What you're becoming. Nathaniel moved closer to his brother's horse. You know what he's doing is wrong, Marcus. You just don't care. Wrong. We're following the law. If these people can't maintain proper documentation, that ain't our fault. It is when Father deliberately targets families he knows can't afford lawyers to fight back. That's called business. Marcus's smile faded. Something you never understood. You always were soft, just like Mother. Look where it got her, dead before 50, nothing to show for her life, except a weak son who can't tell the difference between charity and suicide. Nathaniel moved fast. One moment he was standing still, the next, he'd hauled Marcus off his horse and drove a fist into his brother's jaw. They went down in a tangle of fists and fury, years of resentment exploding into violence. The ranch hands moved to intervene, but Sarah's rifle came up. Stay on your horses. They froze. Sarah's hands stayed steady on the rifle, her voice harder than she felt. This is between brothers. Y'all stay out of it. The fight was brief, but brutal. Nathaniel was bigger, but Marcus fought dirty, kicking, clawing, going for eyes and throat. When Nathaniel finally pinned him, both were bleeding. You ever speak about Mother like that again? Nathaniel's voice shook with rage. And brother or not, I'll finish what I just started. You understand me? Marcus spat blood. Father's gonna hear about this. Good. Tell him I'm done pretending his empire ain't built on theft and misery. Tell him I'm done being silent while he destroys families. Tell him... Nathaniel released his brother roughly. Tell him he's got one son who takes after him, and it ain't gonna be me. Marcus scrambled to his horse, mounted with shaking hands. Blood ran from his split lip, his left eye already swelling shut. You're dead to this family, Marcus said. You know that, right? After the hearing after father wins, you're gonna have nothing. No home, no money, no future. Hope your new friends are worth it." He rode off with the ranch hands, leaving Nathaniel standing in the yard with bruised knuckles and something that looked like relief on his face. Sarah lowered the rifle. "You all right?" "Fine." Nathaniel flexed his hands, winced. "Sorry you had to see that." "Don't apologize for defending your mother's memory." Sarah moved closer, examined his split knuckles. "Come inside. I'll clean those." "Miss Bennett, you just fought your brother for us. Least I can do is make sure your hands don't get infected." Inside, Sarah worked on Nathaniel's hands, while her siblings pretended not to watch. She cleaned the cuts with whiskey that made him hiss, wrapped them in clean cloth torn from one of her mother's old dresses. "Your brother's right about one thing," she said quietly. "After the hearing, win or lose, you ain't got a family to go back to." "I know." "That don't scare you." Nathaniel looked at her, something intense in his eyes. "What scares me is waking up at 60 and realizing I spent my whole life doing nothing that mattered, that I had every advantage and wasted it maintaining an empire I didn't believe in." His voice dropped. "Marcus asked if you're worth my inheritance. Wrong question. Right question is whether I'm worth the person I could be if I stopped letting fear of losing money prevent me from gaining character." Sarah's hand stilled on his. "You're an odd man, Nathaniel Crawford." "I know. My mother used to say I was born 100 years too late, that I should have been a preacher or a poet instead of a rancher." He smiled slightly. She wasn't wrong. "You write poetry." His face flushed. "Nobody's supposed to know that. Your secret's safe." Sarah finished wrapping his hands, stepped back before the moment could become something she wasn't ready for. "You're welcome to sleep in the barn if you meant what you said about staying." "I meant it." "Then I'll get you blankets." That night, Sarah lay awake listening to the sounds of her cabin. Ethan's soft snoring, Callie's restless shifting, Jamie's occasional whimper from nightmares he couldn't shake. And outside in the barn, a man who'd given up everything to help them. She thought about 30% odds, thought about Judge Blackwood and Clayton Crawford's lawyers, thought about the hearing now 10 days away, thought about Nathaniel's bruised hands and the way he'd looked at her when he said some things mattered more than money. Sleep came late and brought dreams of courtrooms and lost homes and a future she couldn't quite see clearly enough to trust. The next morning brought Ruth Washington's visit. The black woman rode up at dawn, her face grave. "Sarah, I need to talk to you." They sat on the porch while Ruth twisted her hands, clearly struggling with something difficult. "Samuel and we want to testify for you." "Want to, but—" Ruth stopped. "Clayton Crawford came by yesterday. Said if we testify against him, he'll file a claim challenge against our homestead next." The words hit like cold water. "Ruth, I know we should stand up, should do what's right. But Sarah, we got 3 children. If we lose our land—" Ruth's voice broke. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but I can't risk my babies for principle." Sarah felt something harden in her chest. "I understand. Do you?" "Because I don't." Ruth was crying now. "I hate myself for this. Samuel's been pacing all night saying we're cowards. But I keep thinking about my children with nowhere to go and I just—" "Ruth." Sarah took her neighbor's hands. "You're protecting your family. That ain't cowardice. That's love." "It feels like betrayal." "It ain't. Crawford's the one doing the betraying, threatening you to prevent testimony." Sarah's voice hardened. "How many others has he threatened?" Ruth's silence was answer enough. After she left, Sarah found Nathaniel in the barn and told him what happened. His expression went dark. "That's my father's strategy. Threaten anyone who might testify, isolate you legally, make sure you stand alone in court." He slammed his fist against the stall. "I should have expected this." "You got a list of everyone he's threatened. Why?" "Because Harrison needs to know. Because a judge might care that witnesses are being intimidated." Sarah's mind raced. "Can you get proof?" "Maybe. Father keeps records of everything." Nathaniel's eyes lit with understanding. You're thinking if we can prove witness intimidation, we can show the judge this ain't a simple property dispute. It's a pattern of abuse. Sarah felt something like hope rising. Can you get into his office? I still got keys to the house, but Sarah, if I get caught. Then don't get caught. That night, Nathaniel rode back to his father's ranch. Sarah waited, unable to sleep, imagining everything that could go wrong. When he returned at 3 in the morning with a leather satchel stuffed with papers, relief nearly dropped her to her knees. I got everything. Nathaniel's voice shook with exhaustion and adrenaline. Every family he's threatened in the last 5 years, every homesteader he's forced out, every legal manipulation his lawyers documented. He kept records. My father's meticulous about documentation. Probably never occurred to him someone would use it against him. Nathaniel spread papers across the table. This is enough, Sarah. This proves pattern and practice. This shows systematic targeting of vulnerable families. Sarah stared at the papers, years of her enemy's crimes documented in his own hand. Harrison needs to see this, now. They rode to town at first light, woke Harrison from sleep, spread the evidence across his office floor. The lawyer examined page after page, his expression shifting from sleepy irritation to focused intensity. Miss Bennett, do you understand what you're holding? Proof. More than proof. This is a civil rights case waiting to happen. This ain't just about your homestead anymore. Harrison looked up, something fierce in his eyes. This is about whether territorial law protects working families or just serves the wealthy. We take this to Judge Blackwood. We're not asking him to rule on property, we're asking him to rule on justice. Can we win? With this. Harrison gestured to the papers. We got a real chance. Maybe 60–70%. Blackwood's political, but he's not corrupt. Show him systematic abuse of legal process, he'll have to respond or risk his reputation. Sarah felt tears burn her eyes. 60%. Don't celebrate yet. Harrison's voice turned grave. When Clayton Crawford finds out we have these documents, he's gonna come at you with everything he's got. And I mean everything. Are you prepared for that? Sarah thought about Ruth Washington's tears, about Thomas Gray's suicide, about every family her enemy had destroyed. I'm prepared. Then we got 6 days to prepare a case that'll either save your home or get you killed trying. Harrison started organizing papers. Nathaniel, you realize you just committed theft from your father. I realize I just did the first truly honest thing in my life. Nathaniel met Harrison's eyes. File it. Use everything. I'll testify to its authenticity. That'll destroy any chance of reconciliation with your family. My family destroyed itself when my father chose money over humanity. Nathaniel's voice stayed steady. I'm just choosing not to go down with the ship. They worked through the morning, categorizing evidence, building arguments, preparing for war. By noon, Harrison had drafted a motion to present evidence of systematic witness intimidation and abuse of legal process. This changes everything, Harrison said. We file this, we're not just defending your property claim. We're attacking Crawford's entire legal strategy. He's gonna retaliate. Let him. Sarah's voice carried a strength she'd built through months of fear. I'm done being afraid. The retaliation came faster than expected. 2 days after they filed Harrison's motion, the territorial marshal showed up at Sarah's cabin with an arrest warrant. Sarah Bennett, you're under arrest for theft of property belonging to Clayton Crawford. Sarah stared at the paper. What property? Legal documents taken from the Crawford ranch house. The marshal looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Miss Bennett. I got to take you in. Those documents prove Crawford's been intimidating witnesses. Nathaniel stepped forward. I took them, not her. Warrant says Sarah Bennett. The marshal wouldn't meet Nathaniel's eyes. Orders from Judge Blackwood himself. Sarah's mind raced. The hearing's in 4 days. This is designed to keep me from attending. That may be, But I still got to bring you in. The marshal gestured to his horse. You can come peaceable or not, but you're coming. I'll post bail. Nathaniel grabbed his coat. Harrison can... Bail's set at $2,000. The marshal's voice was apologetic. Somebody wants you locked up real bad, Miss Bennett. $2,000. More than everything they owned combined. Sarah felt the trap close around her. I'll get the money. Nathaniel's voice was desperate. I'll sell my horse, my saddle, everything. You ain't got time. The marshal moved toward Sarah. She's got to come now. Sarah looked at her siblings. Ethan's fury, Callie's fear, Jamie's tears. Looked at Nathaniel's helpless rage. Looked at the future, crumbling before it could begin. It's all right. She kept her voice steady. Ethan, you're in charge while I'm gone. Nathaniel, you get Harrison. You fight this. Sarah, promise me. She grabbed his arm. Promise you'll keep fighting, hearing or no hearing. You've got the evidence. You know the case. You make sure my family keeps this land. I promise. Nathaniel's voice broke. But Sarah, no time for buts. She turned to the marshal. Let's go. They rode toward town, leaving her family crying in the yard, and Nathaniel standing helpless among the ruins of their careful plans. Sarah kept her spine straight, her eyes forward, her fear locked deep where no one could see it. 4 days until the hearing that would decide everything. And she'd face it from a jail cell if Clayton Crawford had his way. But Sarah Bennett hadn't survived this long by accepting defeat. She'd find a way to fight even from behind bars. She had to. Her family's future depended on it. The jail cell smelled like old sweat and defeat. Sarah sat on the narrow cot, watching dust motes drift through the barred window, and tried not to think about what was happening at home. 3 days until the hearing. 3 days locked away while Clayton Crawford dismantled everything they'd built. The door at the end of the corridor clanged open. Sarah expected the marshal with supper, but Rachel Finch strode in, the journalist from the Territorial Gazette notebook already in hand. Miss Bennett, you got a minute? Got nothing but minutes. Sarah stood. How'd you get in here? Told the marshal I was your lawyer's assistant. He didn't ask questions. Rachel pulled up a stool, sat close to the bars. I've been following your case. Clayton Crawford's arrest warrant is garbage, and we both know it. But what I want to know is, you got proof he's systematically targeting homesteaders. Sarah studied the woman. 40 maybe, with sharp eyes and ink-stained fingers. Why? Because I've been waiting 5 years for someone to stand up to Crawford. Someone with evidence, with cause, with enough rage to see it through. Rachel's voice dropped. My husband worked his claim for 3 years. Crawford's lawyers found a documentation error, one missing signature on a witness form. Filed a challenge, won in court. Week later, my husband was dead. Fell off his horse, they said. Convenient timing. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. You think Crawford killed him? I think men who threaten witnesses don't stop at threats when the stakes are high enough. Rachel leaned closer. But I can't prove murder. Can prove a pattern of legal abuse, though. If you give me access to those documents Nathaniel took. Why would I do that? Because public pressure is the only weapon you got left. Crawford can control judges and marshals and territorial officials. He can't control what people read in newspapers. Rachel pulled out a folded paper. This is tomorrow's edition. Front page. Sarah took the paper, read the headline. Local woman jailed on false charges. Crawford Ranch accused of systematic homesteader intimidation. You published this without confirmation. I confirmed it with 3 other families Crawford's targeted. They wouldn't testify in court because they're scared, but they'll talk to a journalist off the record. Rachel's smile was sharp. By tomorrow morning, every homesteader in Wyoming territory will know what Crawford's been doing. That's pressure even Judge Blackwood can't ignore. This could get you killed. Could get us both killed. Rachel stood. But I'm tired of watching powerful men destroy lives without consequences. Aren't you? Sarah handed back the paper. The documents are with Isaiah Harrison. He'll give you copies if I say so. You saying so? I'm saying burn it all down. If I'm going down, Crawford's coming with me. Rachel's grin was fierce. Now you're talking. After she left, Sarah lay on the cot and tried to sleep. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw her siblings' faces. Saw Ethan trying to be a man at 14. Saw Callie's fierce defiance crumbling into fear. Saw Jamie's tears. Saw Nathaniel's promise to keep fighting, and wondered if promises meant anything when the system was designed to break them. The next morning, the marshal appeared with breakfast and a visitor. You got 10 minutes, he said, unlocking the cell door. Clayton Crawford stepped inside. Sarah stood slowly, hands clenched. The man was bigger than she'd imagined, 6 feet tall, silver hair, wearing a suit that cost more than her cabin. His eyes were cold blue ice, assessing her like livestock at auction. Miss Bennett, I thought we should talk. We got nothing to talk about. I disagree. Clayton gestured to the cot. May I? It's your jail. Do what you want. He sat, leaving her standing. Power play. Sarah understood. Make her feel small in her own cell. My son tells me you're a stubborn woman. I respect that. Stubbornness built my empire. Clayton pulled out a cigar, didn't light it. But stubbornness without sense is just foolishness. You came here to insult me. I came to make you an offer. Final offer, no negotiation. Clayton's voice stayed level, businesslike. I'll drop the theft charges. I'll withdraw my claim challenge. I'll give you $10,000 cash, enough to buy better land somewhere else, set your family up properly. All you got to do is leave Wyoming territory and never come back. The number staggered her. $10,000. More money than her father had earned in his entire life. Why? Because my son's thrown away his inheritance for you. Because this case is becoming public in ways that damage my reputation. Because I'm tired of fighting over 160 acres. Clayton's eyes stayed cold despite his reasonable tone. Take the money, Miss Bennett. Walk away before this gets uglier. You mean before your pattern of abuse gets exposed? Something flickered across Clayton's face. My attorney tells me you have documents stolen from my office. Documents that, taken out of context, might suggest impropriety in my business dealings. Taken in context, they prove you're a thief hiding behind lawyers. Clayton's composure cracked slightly. Careful, girl. You're in my jail, charged with crimes I can make stick if I want to. Then make them stick. Haul me before Judge Blackwood. Let's see what he thinks about your evidence. Sarah moved closer to where he sat. Or drop the charges like you just offered, because you know they're garbage designed to keep me from the hearing. The hearing where you plan to present stolen documents obtained through illegal means. Clayton stood his full height, intimidating in the small cell. Harrison's motion to introduce that evidence will be denied. I've already spoken to Blackwood. You'll face that hearing with nothing but your incomplete paperwork and desperate testimony from a family everyone knows is lying to keep land they don't legally own. Everyone knows, Sarah's voice rose, or everyone you've threatened into silence. I don't threaten, I enforce legal rights. Clayton moved to the cell door, called for the marshal. You got 24 hours to accept my offer, Miss Bennett. After that, you'll face charges that'll put you in territorial prison for 5 years. Your siblings will end up in orphanages, your land will be forfeit, and Nathaniel will have destroyed his future for nothing. Think about that before you let pride cost them everything. He left. The cell door clanged shut. Sarah sank onto the cot, hands shaking with rage and fear in equal measure. $10,000. Her family's security. All she had to do was surrender. She thought about Jamie's nightmares, about Callie's dreams of becoming a doctor, about Ethan's desperate need to believe fighting mattered. Thought about her parents buried behind a cabin that might not be theirs much longer. Thought about Nathaniel's bruised hands and his quiet insistence that some things mattered more than money. 24 hours. By tomorrow, she'd either save her family or destroy them trying. That afternoon, Isaiah Harrison finally got permission to visit. He looked exhausted, carrying a leather case stuffed with papers. "I got news. Some good, some terrible." He sat on the stool Rachel had used. "Good news. Blackwood denied Crawford's motion to suppress the stolen documents. Says if their authentic method of acquisition don't matter in cases involving systematic fraud." Relief flooded through Sarah. That means... Wait. Terrible news. Crawford's lawyers filed an emergency motion to postpone the hearing. They're claiming they need time to authenticate documents and prepare a defense against new allegations. Blackwood granted a 2-week delay. 2 weeks. Sarah gripped the bars. "Harrison, I can't stay in here 2 weeks. My family." "I know. I'm working on bail reduction, but Crawford's got every judge in his pocket." Harrison pulled out papers. "But here's the thing, that 2-week delay might actually help us. Rachel Finch's article hit the streets this morning. It's spreading like wildfire. Homesteaders are organizing, demanding investigation into Crawford's practices. The territorial governor's office is getting letters. This is becoming bigger than one property dispute. I don't care about bigger. I care about my siblings alone in that cabin." "They ain't alone." Harrison's voice gentled. "Nathaniel moved into your barn. He's there every day making sure they're fed and safe. Callie's teaching Jamie his letters. Ethan's maintaining the property. They're holding together Sarah. You taught them how." The words cracked something in her chest. She turned away before Harrison could see her cry. "Crawford came here today. Offered $10,000 if I leave the territory." "10,000?" Harrison whistled low. "That's serious money." "I know. You considering it?" Sarah thought about her answer. Thought about what her father would say, what her mother would want. Thought about the kind of person she wanted Callie to become, the kind of man she wanted Ethan to be. "If I take that money, I'm teaching my siblings that bullies win. That power trumps justice. That fighting back ain't worth the cost." She turned back to Harrison. "I can't teach them that. Rather lose everything teaching them to stand up. Even if standing up puts them in orphanages. Even then. Because at least they'll know their sister fought for them. At least they'll know some things are worth losing for." Harrison studied her for a long moment. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the most foolish." "Maybe both." "Maybe." He stood, gathered his papers. "I'll keep working on bail, but Sarah, prepare yourself. If I can't get you out before the hearing, we'll have to proceed without you. That means Nathaniel becomes our primary witness. You comfortable with that?" Sarah thought about the man who'd given up his inheritance, who'd stolen from his father, who'd moved into her barn to protect her siblings. The man who looked at her like she mattered. "I'm comfortable with it." "Good. Because he's outside right now, refusing to leave until he sees you. Let him in." Harrison signaled the marshal. A minute later, Nathaniel stepped into the cell corridor, his face haggard with exhaustion. He'd lost weight in the 4 days since her arrest, dark circles shadowing his eyes. Sarah. Just her name, but it carried everything. "You look terrible." "So do you." He moved closer to the bars, wrapped his hands around them, like he could pull them apart through sheer will. "I'm sorry. This is my fault if I hadn't taken those documents." "Don't. You did what needed doing." Sarah covered his hands with hers. "Harrison says you're staying at the cabin. Where else would I be? With your family, making peace with your father before you lose everything." Nathaniel's laugh was bitter. "I lost my family when I chose to see them clearly. Can't lose what you never really had." His voice dropped. "But your family, Sarah, they need you. Jamie has nightmares every night. Callie's trying to be strong, but she's terrified. Ethan's so angry he can barely function. They need their sister. And I'm stuck in here because your father's a bastard who controls the legal system. I'm working on that. Something fierce entered Nathaniel's expression. I've been talking to other homesteaders. Word spreading about Crawford's tactics. We're organizing 20 families willing to show up at the hearing to demonstrate public support. Make it harder for Blackwood to rule against you. Nathaniel, if they show up, Crawford will target every one of them next. They know. They're showing up anyway. He squeezed her hands. You inspired them, Sarah. You standing up gave them courage to stand up. That matters. Matters less than keeping my siblings safe. Your siblings are safe because you taught them to be strong, because you showed them how to fight. Nathaniel's voice roughened. And when we win this hearing, if we win, when we win, he insisted, you'll have showed them that fighting back works, that justice exists, if you're brave enough to demand it. Sarah wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that courage and evidence and public pressure would overcome money and power and corrupt systems, but she'd learned too young that the world didn't work that way. What if we lose? Then we lose together, and we figure out what comes next. Nathaniel reached through the bars, touched her face with gentle fingers. But Sarah, win or lose, you're the bravest person I've ever met, and whatever happens, I ain't leaving. You understand me? I'm with you until the end. The words settled warm in her chest, filling empty places she'd tried to ignore. But fear whispered that hope was dangerous, that trusting anyone, even Nathaniel, was foolish. Your father thinks you're throwing your life away for me. My father thinks wealth is the only thing worth having. He's wrong. Nathaniel's thumb traced her cheekbone. I'm building something worth keeping. Something that'll matter when I'm old and looking back. That's not throwing my life away, that's finally living it. The marshal appeared, keys jangling. Time's up. Nathaniel didn't move. 1 more minute. Now, Mr. Crawford, rules are rules. Sarah pulled back before the marshal could separate them. Go. Take care of my family. Sarah, that's an order. She tried to smile. And when you see Callie, tell her to keep teaching Jamie. Tell Ethan the fence on the north pasture needs checking. Tell them I love them. Tell them yourself in 2 days. I'm getting you out of here. Nathaniel backed toward the door, still watching her. I promise. After he left, Sarah lay on the cot and stared at the ceiling. 2 days. She'd either be free or face 5 years in territorial prison on manufactured charges. Either way, the hearing was in 2 weeks. Either way, her family's fate would be decided by a judge who might or might not care about justice. Either way, she'd taught her siblings something, whether it was that fighting matters or that fighting was pointless remained to be seen. The next morning, the cell door opened before dawn. Sarah jerked awake, expecting the marshal, but Nathaniel stood there with keys in hand and desperation on his face. We're leaving. Now. What? Harrison found a legal loophole. Technical error in the arrest warrant, wrong date, wrong statute cited. Blackwood had to release you, but Crawford's lawyers are already filing corrections. We got maybe 2 hours before you're arrested again. Nathaniel grabbed her arm, pulled her from the cell. Move. They ran through the empty jail, burst into pre-dawn darkness. Nathaniel's horse waited outside, already saddled. He swung up, pulled Sarah behind him, kicked the animal into a gallop before she could protest. They rode hard for 30 minutes until Cartwright disappeared behind them and the jail became just another bad memory. Finally, Nathaniel slowed the horse to a walk, both of them breathing hard. What did you do? Sarah demanded. Breaking me out of jail. I didn't break you out. You were legally released. Harrison's got the paperwork. Nathaniel's voice carried grim satisfaction. But yeah, Crawford's gonna fight it. You got until the hearing to stay free. After that depends on what Blackwood decides. So I'm a fugitive. You're a free woman with questionable legal status. Different thing. He twisted in the saddle to look at her. But Sarah, you can't go home. Crawford's men will be watching the cabin. You'll be arrested the minute you show up. My family. I'll take care of them, but you need to disappear for 2 weeks, somewhere Crawford can't find you. Sarah's mind raced. Nowhere in Wyoming was safe. Crawford owned half the territory, had influence in every town. She'd be found within days. Unless she went somewhere Crawford wouldn't think to look. Swift Hawk's trading post. It's on Lakota land. Territorial marshals won't follow me there. Will Swift Hawk hide you? He will if I ask. Sarah made the decision. Take me there, then go back to my family. Keep them safe. Nathaniel hesitated. Sarah, if something happens, if Crawford finds you, then I'll handle it. But Nathaniel, my siblings can't survive another loss. You promise me no matter what happens to me, you'll make sure they're cared for. I promise. His voice was rough. But nothing's happening to you. You're surviving this. We both are. They rode to Swift Hawk's trading post as the sun rose. The Lakota man emerged as they approached, his weathered face giving nothing away. Sarah Bennett, you look like trouble. I am trouble. Need a place to hide for 2 weeks. Swift Hawk studied her, then Nathaniel. Crawford hunting you. With every resource he's got. Good. That man needs someone hunting back. Swift Hawk gestured toward a small cabin behind the trading post. You can stay, but you work. I don't shelter freeloaders. Thank you. Don't thank me. I remember when Crawford tried to force my people off land we'd traded for legally. I know what he does to those who can't fight back. Swift Hawk's eyes moved to Nathaniel. You're his son. I'm the son who ain't like him. Nathaniel's voice stayed steady. The son trying to undo some of what he's done. Trying and succeeding are different. Swift Hawk moved closer. But you brought Sarah here, put yourself at risk to protect her. That speaks louder than blood. He nodded, a gesture of respect. She'll be safe. You have my word. Nathaniel turned to Sarah, his expression carrying everything he couldn't say, with Swift Hawk watching. 2 weeks. Stay hidden. Let Harrison and me handle the hearing. I'm not letting you fight my battle while I hide. You're letting me protect you long enough for you to fight another day. Nathaniel's hands found her shoulders. Please, Sarah, trust me this once. She wanted to argue, wanted to ride back to her cabin, to her siblings, to the fight. But pragmatism won over pride. 2 weeks. Then I come home, hearing or no hearing. 2 weeks. Nathaniel agreed. He pulled her close, quick and fierce, then released her before she could respond. Stay safe. He rode off, leaving Sarah standing in front of Swift Hawk's cabin with nothing but the clothes on her back and fear eating at her insides. Come, Swift Hawk said. You look like you need food and rest. We'll talk after. Inside the cabin, Sarah finally broke. The tears she'd held back through jail, through fear, through Nathaniel's desperate rescue, came in shaking sobs she couldn't control. Swift Hawk said nothing, just poured tea and waited until she'd cried herself empty. Better? He asked finally. No, but functional. Sarah wiped her face. Thank you for this. Thank me by surviving. By winning. Swift Hawk's voice carried weight of experience. Men like Crawford think land belongs to those with power to take it. They're wrong. Land belongs to those who respect it, work it, care for it. Your father understood that. So do you. Understanding don't stop Crawford from winning in court. Maybe not. But fighting stops him from winning easily. And sometimes that's enough. Swift Hawk stood. Rest now. Tomorrow you work. 2 weeks is a long time to sit still worrying. Sarah lay down on the narrow cot, exhausted beyond measure. Through the window she could see Wyoming's sky stretching endless and indifferent to human struggles. 2 weeks until the hearing that would decide everything. 2 weeks of not knowing if her siblings were safe, if Nathaniel was keeping his promises, if Harrison could build a case strong enough to overcome Crawford's power. 2 weeks of waiting while her future hung in balance. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to find sleep. It didn't come easy. It never did anymore. The days at Swift Hawk's trading post passed like years. Sarah worked from dawn to dusk, hauling water, mending tack, helping with inventory, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from spiraling into fear. But nights were torture. Every sound could be Crawford's men. Every rider approaching could mean discovery. On the fifth day, a young Lakota boy rode up at sunset with a message. Sarah's hands shook as she unfolded the paper, recognizing Nathaniel's handwriting. Crawford knows you're gone. Has men searching every town within 50 miles. Don't come home. Harrison's building the case without you. Trust me. N. Trust me. As if trust came easy when her siblings were alone and she was hiding like a criminal. Swift Hawk read her expression. You want to go back. Every minute of every day. Then why don't you? Because Nathaniel's right. If I show up, I'll be arrested. Can't fight from a cell. Sarah crumpled the paper. But sitting here doing nothing while they fight my battle, you think waiting is nothing? Swift Hawk's voice carried the weight of experience. Waiting takes more courage than fighting sometimes. Fighting is action. Waiting is faith. I ain't got much faith left. Then find some, because in 8 days you'll need it. The 8th day brought Rachel Finch riding hard with news that made Sarah's blood run cold. Crawford's changed tactics, Rachel said, dismounting quickly. He's not just fighting your property claim anymore. He's filed criminal charges against Nathaniel for theft against Harrison for receiving stolen property, and he's pressuring Judge Blackwood to rule all your evidence inadmissible. Can he do that? He's doing it. The hearing's in 5 days, and Crawford's lawyers have filed so many motions that Blackwood's drowning in paperwork. Harrison's trying to counter, but Sarah... Rachel's voice dropped. You need to be there. Without you to testify about your family's occupation, about your father's intent, Harrison's case falls apart. If I show up, I'll be arrested. Maybe, maybe not. Rachel pulled out another newspaper. Read this. Sarah took the paper. Front page headline, Crawford corruption exposed, territorial governor calls for investigation. Rachel, what did you do? Printed the truth, all of it. Crawford's intimidation tactics, the families he's destroyed, Thomas Gray's suicide, everything. Rachel's smile was fierce. The governor's office received 300 letters demanding action. Blackwood's under pressure to rule fairly or face public outrage. Crawford's lawyers are scrambling. This don't change the law. No, but it changes the politics. Blackwood's up for reappointment next year. He can't afford to look corrupt. Rachel grabbed Sarah's shoulders. Come to that hearing. Let them arrest you in front of a courtroom full of homesteaders and journalists. Make Crawford show his hand publicly. That's how we win, not just in court, but in the court of public opinion. Sarah thought about her siblings, about Nathaniel's promise, about everything that could go wrong. I'll be there. The night before the hearing, Nathaniel rode to Swift Hawk's trading post. Sarah saw him coming from a mile away, recognized the way he sat, his horse even in darkness. She met him in the yard, and for a moment, they just stared at each other. You're thinner, she said finally. So are you. He swung down, moved close, but didn't touch her. Sarah tomorrow. I know. I'm coming. I figured you would. That's why I brought this. He handed her a bundle. Clean dress belonged to my mother. Harrison thinks you should look respectable for court. Sarah unfolded the dress, simple but well-made dark blue wool that would have cost a month of her father's wages. Nathaniel, I can't. You can, and you will. My mother would have wanted you to have it. His voice roughened. She believed in fighting for what's right. Would have admired what you're doing. Your father thinks I'm destroying your life. My father destroyed his own life when he chose money over humanity. I'm just refusing to follow his path. Nathaniel finally touched her hands, gentle on her face. Sarah, whatever happens tomorrow, don't. She pulled back. Don't say goodbye. I can't hear that right now. Then hear this, I love you. Not because you're a charity case or a cause to fight for, Because you're the bravest, stubbornest, most frustrating woman I've ever met. Because watching you fight taught me what courage actually looks like." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "And when we win tomorrow, when your land is secure and you're safe, I'm gonna ask you to marry me. So don't you dare give up before I get that chance." The words hit Sarah like a fist to the chest. Marriage, a future. Things she'd stopped letting herself imagine. "Nathaniel, you don't got to answer now. Just had to say it before tomorrow in case—" He stopped, seemed to catch himself. Just had to say it. Sarah knew she should protest. Should remind him she came with 3 children and debt and a life of hardship he'd never experienced. Should tell him marrying her would mean poverty and struggle and nothing like the life he'd known. Instead, she kissed him. It was brief, fierce, full of everything she couldn't say. When she pulled back, Nathaniel's eyes carried something that looked like hope. "That's not an answer," he said. "It's not a no. I'll take it." He stepped back, seemed to gather himself. "Dawn tomorrow. Harrison wants us at the courthouse early. Your siblings will be there. I tried to talk them into staying home, but Ethan refused. Said their place is beside their sister. He's 14. He shouldn't have to. He's the man you raised him to be. Let him stand with you." Nathaniel moved toward his horse. "Get some sleep, Sarah. Tomorrow we win your home back. Or lose everything trying? Then we lose together." He swung into the saddle. "But I ain't planning on losing." After he left, Sarah sat in Swift Hawk's cabin with the dress spread across her lap. Marriage. The word felt foreign, impossible. She'd spent so long focused on survival that the idea of a future beyond keeping her family fed seemed like foolish dreaming. But Nathaniel made her want to dream again. Made her want to believe that fighting wasn't pointless, that courage mattered, that maybe, just maybe, the world could be better than she'd learned to expect. She fell asleep with those dangerous thoughts and woke at dawn with terror sharp in her throat. Today. Everything decided today. Swift Hawk was already up, coffee brewing. He handed her a cup without comment, just nodded toward the dress. "You should wear it. Judge needs to see you as a person, not just a legal problem." Sarah changed, fumbling with buttons. Her rough hands weren't used to managing. The dress fit well enough. Nathaniel's mother must have been about her size. It felt strange wearing clothes that fine, like she was pretending to be someone she wasn't. "You look proper," Swift Hawk said. "Like someone who deserves what she's fighting for." "I look like I'm wearing someone else's life." "Maybe. But sometimes pretending to be strong is how you become strong." He handed her bread and cheese. "Eat. You'll need energy for what's coming." The ride to Cheyenne took 3 hours. Sarah made it alone. Swift Hawk couldn't afford to be seen helping her publicly, not with Crawford's reach. She arrived at the territorial courthouse just after 9, and the sight stopped her cold. The steps were packed with people. Homesteaders by the look of them. Rough clothes, weathered faces, families clustered together. They held signs, "Justice for Bennett." "Crawford corruption must end." "Homesteaders stand together." Rachel Finch moved through the crowd, notebook in hand, documenting everything. When she saw Sarah, her face split into a fierce grin. "You came." "Said I would. These people showed up for you. 27 families risking Crawford's retaliation to support your case." Rachel gestured to the crowd. "You inspired them, Sarah. Gave them courage to stand up." Sarah's throat tightened. These people, strangers, mostly risking their own security to support hers. The weight of it was almost unbearable. "Miss Bennett?" A woman pushed through the crowd, pulling 2 children. "I'm Martha Hayes. Crawford threatened us 3 years ago. We didn't fight, took his money and left. Been regretting it ever since. You fight, hear me. You fight for all of us who didn't." Others pressed close, offering support, sharing stories of Crawford's intimidation. Sarah felt overwhelmed by their faith in her, their belief that one woman's fight could change anything. Then Ethan's voice cut through the crowd. "Sarah!" Her brother crashed into her arms, tight around her waist. Behind him, Callie and Jamie fought their way through, all of them crying and laughing and holding on like they'd never let go. "You're really here." Ethan's voice broke. Nathaniel said you'd come, but I didn't believe. I'm here. Sarah hugged them all, trying to memorize the feeling. I'm here and I ain't leaving. Miss Bennett. The marshal appeared uncomfortable. I got a warrant for your arrest. The crowd went silent. Sarah felt her siblings tense, felt the collective anger rising from the homesteaders. But she kept her voice level. I know you do. You gonna execute it now in front of all these witnesses, or you gonna let me attend my hearing first? The marshal looked at the crowd, at the journalist documenting every word, at Rachel Finch's sharp smile. He made a decision. After the hearing, if Judge Blackwood orders it. Fair enough. Sarah took her siblings' hands. Let's go find out if justice still exists in Wyoming territory. Inside the courtroom was packed. Sarah's side filled with homesteaders and supporters. Crawford's side held businessmen in expensive suits, territorial officials, the machinery of power and wealth. And at the front behind the prosecutor's table, Clayton Crawford sat like a king surveying his kingdom. His eyes found Sarah cold and dismissive. Then they moved to Nathaniel sitting at the defense table beside Harrison, and something ugly crossed his face. Nathaniel didn't flinch, just stared back at his father with quiet defiance. Judge Blackwood entered, and the crowd rose. Cornelius Blackwood was 52, gray-haired, with the careful expression of a man who'd learned to reveal nothing. He surveyed the packed courtroom with evident displeasure. This is a property hearing, not a public spectacle, he said. I'll have order, or I'll clear this room. Your Honor. Harrison stood. The people present have legitimate interest in this case. It affects property rights throughout the territory. I'll decide what's legitimate, Mr. Harrison. Blackwood shuffled papers. Let's proceed. Mr. Peaton, present your case. Crawford's lawyer stood tall, silver-haired, radiating confidence. Your Honor, this is a simple matter. Sarah Bennett occupies land her father failed to properly claim. Without valid documentation, without legal standing as head of household, she has no right to the property. Mr. Crawford has filed proper claim in accordance with territorial law. We ask the court to recognize his ownership and order Miss Bennett's eviction. Mr. Harrison. Harrison rose slowly, his movements deliberate. Your Honor, this ain't about paperwork. It's about whether territorial law exists to help working families or to serve wealthy land grabbers who exploit technical violations to steal homes. Objection. Peaton's voice was sharp. Counsel is making inflammatory accusations. Sustained. Mr. Harrison, stick to legal arguments. Yes, Your Honor. Harrison pulled out documents. The defense presents evidence of Clayton Crawford's systematic targeting of homesteaders with documentation irregularities. Over the past 5 years, Crawford has filed 17 claim challenges. He won 16. Every family lost their homes. This ain't legal diligence. It's predatory practice designed to accumulate land through intimidation. Objection. Mr. Crawford's past business dealings are irrelevant. They're entirely relevant to establishing pattern and practice. Harrison's voice rose. Miss Bennett's family has occupied their land for 4 years. They've built a home, established roots, integrated into the community. Her father's failure to complete filing was due to his untimely death, not neglect. To rule against her is to say that paperwork matters more than people, that technical violations justify destroying families. Blackwood leaned back. Mr. Harrison, the law requires proper documentation. I can't ignore that because circumstances are sympathetic. The law also recognizes equity, Your Honor. And there ain't nothing equitable about allowing a wealthy rancher to take land from orphaned children because their dead father missed a filing deadline. Orphaned children whose sister is wanted on theft charges. Peaton interjected smoothly. Let's not pretend Miss Bennett is an innocent victim. She conspired to steal confidential documents from Mr. Crawford's office. Documents that prove witness intimidation. Harrison cut him off. Documents that show Crawford threatened every family who might testify for Miss Bennett. That's criminal obstruction, Your Honor. And if Crawford wants to press charges about document theft, he'll have to explain in open court why he kept detailed records of his intimidation tactics. The courtroom erupted. Blackwood's gavel came down hard. "Order, I'll have order." He glared at both lawyers. "I'll review evidence in chambers. This hearing is in recess until 2 o'clock. The gavel fell again. Sarah felt her knees go weak. Harrison grabbed her arm, steadied her. "That went better than expected," he said quietly. "He didn't rule. He didn't rule yet. That means he's actually thinking about it." Harrison glanced at Nathaniel. "Your testimony this afternoon will matter. Be ready." During recess, Sarah stood on the courthouse steps with her siblings pressed close. The homesteaders offered food and encouragement, but she could barely hear them over the roaring in her ears. Nathaniel found her in the crowd. "How you holding up?" "I'm terrified." "Good. Means you understand the stakes." He pulled her aside away from listening ears. "Sarah, if Blackwood rules against us, I got a plan. Money set aside, horses ready. We can leave tonight, you, me, your siblings. Start over somewhere Crawford's reach don't extend. Running. Surviving." Nathaniel's voice was fierce. "I won't let you go to prison. I won't let your siblings end up in orphanages. If we lose, we leave. Together." Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to say running was surrender, that leaving meant Crawford won. But looking at Nathaniel's desperate determination, she realized he was offering her something she'd never had a partner willing to sacrifice everything. "Let's win first. Run later if we have to." "Deal." The afternoon session started with Nathaniel's testimony. He took the stand with visible nervousness, but his voice stayed steady as Harrison led him through questions. "Mr. Crawford, how long have you known the Bennett family?" 6 weeks. "And in that time, what have you observed about their occupation of the disputed property?" "A family that's built a home through honest labor. A woman raising 3 children alone, maintaining property. Her father developed, doing everything the Homestead Act requires, except completing paperwork she didn't know how to file." "Why did you choose to help Miss Bennett?" Nathaniel's eyes found his father. "Because I watched my father destroy families for profit. I decided I didn't want to be that kind of man." Piton stood for cross-examination, his smile predatory. "Mr. Crawford, you admit you stole confidential documents from your father's office." "I took evidence of illegal witness intimidation." "That's not what I asked. Did you or did you not enter your father's office without permission and remove private papers?" "I did." "So you're a thief." "I'm someone who chose justice over blind loyalty." Noble words. "Tell me, Mr. Crawford, do you have romantic feelings for Miss Bennett?" The question hung in the charged air. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "What's that got to do with property law?" "It establishes bias. You're not a disinterested witness. You're a man trying to impress a woman by playing hero." Piton moved closer. "How much money have you given Miss Bennett?" "I paid her lawyer's retainer." "How much?" $500. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Piton smiled. $500 to a woman you barely know. Sounds less like legal assistance and more like buying favor. "Tell me, Mr. Crawford, what exactly are you expecting in return?" "Objection." Harrison was on his feet. "Counsel is implying impropriety. I'm establishing that this witness has personal motivations that compromise his testimony." Piton turned back to Nathaniel. "You're estranged from your father, correct? Disinherited." "I left his house by choice." "Because he disapproved of your involvement with Miss Bennett." "Because I disapproved of his systematic destruction of homesteader families." "Or because you're a young man infatuated with a woman and willing to destroy family relationships to pursue that infatuation." Piton's voice dripped disdain. "Your testimony isn't about justice, Mr. Crawford. It's about impressing a girl." "That's a lie." "Is it? Then explain why you've spent 6 weeks at the Bennett property. Why you've paid her legal fees. Why you've turned against your own father." "Because my father is wrong." Nathaniel's voice cracked. "Because watching him destroy Thomas Gray's family taught me that silence is complicity." "Because I love Sarah Bennett, yes, but that don't make my testimony false." It makes it honest." The words echoed in the stunned courtroom. Sarah felt tears burn her eyes as Nathaniel continued. "You want to know why I'm here? Because my mother raised me to care about people more than profit. Because I watched my father become someone she'd be ashamed of, and I refused to follow that path. Because Sarah Bennett showed me what courage looks like, and it ain't sitting in a mansion pretending legal theft is justice." Peyton opened his mouth, but Blackwood cut him off. "Enough. Step down, Mr. Crawford." Nathaniel returned to his seat, not looking at anyone. Harrison leaned close, whispered something. Then he stood. "Your Honor, the defense calls Sarah Bennett." Sarah's legs barely held her as she walked to the stand. The oath was administered in words that felt distant, unreal. Then Harrison was asking questions, and she had to find her voice. "Miss Bennett, how long have you lived on the disputed property?" 4 years. "Tell the court about your father's claim." Sarah took a breath, found Ethan in the crowd, drew strength from his fierce expression. "My father filed preliminary registration in 1879. He built our cabin, dug a well-cleared land for planting. He meant to complete the filing, but work took precedence. Then he died." "How?" "Horse threw him. Broke his neck. Was dead before we could get help." "And your mother?" "Died 6 months later. Childbirth complications." Sarah's voice stayed steady through sheer will. "I became responsible for my siblings, for keeping us together, for maintaining the home my parents built." "Did you know the homestead claim was incomplete?" "No. I knew about papers my father kept, but I didn't understand what they meant. I thought living on land, improving it, making it home, I thought that was enough." "It should have been." Harrison's voice gentled. "Miss Bennett, if you lose this hearing, what happens to your family?" Sarah looked at Callie, at Jamie, at Ethan, trying so hard to be strong. "We lose everything. Our home, our parents' graves, the life we built from nothing. My siblings end up separated in orphanages or with relatives who don't want them. We lose each other." "And that's what Clayton Crawford wants, to destroy a family for water rights." Objection. Peyton was furious. "That's inflammatory." Sustained. Mr. Harrison, last warning. No further questions. Peyton approached Sarah like a predator stalking wounded prey. "Miss Bennett, you admit your father's claim was never properly filed. It was started but not completed. So you're occupying land you don't legally own." "I'm living in the home my father built, the home my mother died in, the home where my siblings are buried." Sarah's voice hardened. "Legal or not, it's ours." "Actually, it's not. That's why we're here." Peyton smiled. "Tell me, how much money has Nathaniel Crawford given you?" "He paid my lawyer." "And lived on your property, slept in your barn, became quite close to you, hasn't he? He's been kind to my family." "Kind? Is that what you call it?" Peyton's voice oozed insinuation. "A wealthy man paying your bills, spending nights at your home?" "He slept in the barn to protect my siblings while I was in jail on false charges your client manufactured." Sarah's composure cracked. "Don't you dare imply something shameful about a man who's shown more integrity than anyone in this courtroom." "Miss Bennett." "No. You want to paint me as some scheming woman using Nathan for money. Here's the truth. I tried to refuse his help. Tried to send him away. He stayed because he cares about justice, not because I seduced him into betraying his father. That's not. I got nothing to offer Nathaniel Crawford. No money, no connections, no future that don't include hardship and struggle. But he looked at my family and saw people worth fighting for. That's more than you or your client have ever done." The courtroom erupted in applause. Blackwood's gavel fell repeatedly. "Order Miss Bennett step down. Mr. Harrison, Mr. Peyton Chambers, now." The lawyers disappeared with the judge. Sarah stumbled from the stand shaking. Nathaniel caught her, held her, while she tried to remember how to breathe. "You did good," he whispered. "So damn good." "I lost my temper." "You told the truth. That matters more." They waited in agonizing silence. Minutes stretched like hours. The courtroom buzzed with speculation, hope, fear. Finally, Blackwood returned. His face revealed nothing as he took his seat. "I've reviewed the evidence, heard testimony, considered applicable law." He paused, and Sarah felt her heart stop. This is not an easy ruling. The law clearly states homestead claims require proper documentation. Miss Bennett's father failed to complete that documentation. Sarah's world tilted. However, Blackwood's voice sharpened. The law also recognizes equity. The evidence shows that Sarah Bennett has maintained continuous occupation, made substantial improvements, and fulfilled every requirement of homestead law except bureaucratic filing. Further evidence suggests Mr. Crawford has systematically targeted families with similar documentation issues, not to enforce law, but to acquire land through legal intimidation. Hope flared desperate and painful. Therefore, I rule as follows. Sarah Bennett's homestead claim is validated. She has 60 days to complete all filing requirements with fees waived due to financial hardship. The property is legally hers, and Clayton Crawford's claim is denied. The courtroom exploded. Sarah couldn't hear through the roaring in her ears, couldn't see through tears, couldn't breathe past the relief crushing her chest. They'd won. Against every odd, against power and money, and a system designed to favor men like Crawford, they'd won. Nathaniel pulled her close, both of them crying, laughing, holding each other like they'd never let go. Her siblings crashed into them, all 5 of them, tangled together in victory. Harrison was shaking hands with homesteaders. Rachel Finch was writing furiously. The crowd was chanting Sarah's name. And at the front of the courtroom, Clayton Crawford sat frozen, his empire cracking around him. Justice had come to Wyoming territory, and Sarah Bennett had forced it to arrive. The celebration lasted exactly 12 minutes before reality crashed back in. Sarah stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by cheering homesteaders when she saw Clayton Crawford emerge. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing danger. Crawford's face was stone, but his eyes burned with cold fury as they fixed on his son. "Nathaniel, a word." "We got nothing to say to each other." Nathaniel kept his arm around Sarah, protective. "We got plenty to say, in private." Crawford's voice dropped. "Unless you want these good people to hear what I got planned for the woman you just ruined your life defending." Sarah felt Nathaniel tense. "You threatening her?" "I'm stating facts. Judge Blackwood gave her 60 days to complete filing. Filing requires fees, surveys, documentation, all things that cost money she don't have." Crawford's smile was knife-thin. "You helped her win in court, son. But court victories don't pay bills, don't feed children, don't survive Wyoming winters. I'll help her." "With what? You got no income, no property, no future. I made sure of that." Crawford moved closer. "You're disinherited, Nathaniel, completely. No money, no land, no claim to the Crawford name. Everything you might have inherited goes to Marcus now." The words hit like physical blows. Sarah saw Nathaniel's face go white, saw the reality of what he'd sacrificed finally becoming real. "I don't care about your money. You will. When winter comes and you can't feed those children you've appointed yourself guardian of. When Sarah's siblings are cold and hungry and looking to you for help, you can't provide." Crawford's voice was almost gentle now, which made it more terrifying. "You made your choice, son. Live with it. But don't pretend it won't cost you everything." He walked away, leaving Nathaniel standing rigid with shock. Sarah grabbed his hand, squeezed hard. "Don't listen to him. We'll figure it out." "He's right, though." Nathaniel's voice came out hollow. "I got no way to support you. No skills except ranching, and no ranch will hire me now, not when it means crossing my father." "Then we'll manage without Sarah." He turned to face her. "I love you. I want to marry you, build a life with you. But what kind of life can I offer I can't even provide for myself, let alone you and 3 children?" The fear in his voice scared her more than Crawford's threats. "You saying you're leaving. I'm saying I don't know how to stay." Nathaniel pulled away, ran his hands through his hair. "I thought if we won, everything would work out. But winning just means we get to keep struggling. And I don't. He stopped, looking lost. I don't know how to survive struggle, Sarah. I've never been poor, never been without resources. What if I'm useless to you? Sarah wanted to comfort him, wanted to promise everything would be fine. But honesty mattered more than comfort. Then you learn. Same way I learned after my parents died. Same way we all learn, by doing it scared and hoping you don't fail too badly. She grabbed his face, made him look at her. You think I wasn't terrified every day? Think I knew how to keep my family alive? I just did it because the alternative was giving up. That's what you do now. What if I fail you? Then you fail me trying. That's more than most men would do. Sarah's voice hardened. Your father thinks you'll give up. Thinks you're too soft, too privileged. Prove him wrong, Nathaniel. Or prove him right and leave. But decide now, because I can't carry your doubts on top of everything else. The harshness in her voice shocked them both. But Nathaniel needed to hear it. Needed to understand that she required a partner, not another dependent. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're right. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just decide. I already decided. I'm staying. His voice grew stronger. I'm staying, and I'm learning, and I'm going to be the kind of man you deserve. Even if it takes years. Even if I'm terrible at it. You won't be terrible. Sarah softened slightly. You'll be frustrating and stubborn and probably useless at cooking, but you won't be terrible. How do you know? Because you fought your own father for us. That's not something terrible men do. Rachel Finch interrupted with news that made Sarah's victory feel less certain. I just spoke to the land office. Completing your filing will cost $375. Survey fees, processing fees, legal documentation fees. You got 60 days to come up with it. $375. It might as well have been $3,000. Where am I supposed to get that kind of money? Same place most folks get at work. Rachel's voice was practical, not unkind. You got skills, Sarah. Your mother was a teacher. You could teach homesteader children. That pays maybe $5 a month. I'd need 6 years to save enough. Then you find other work too. Take in laundrymen clothes, whatever it takes. Rachel squeezed her shoulder. You won the hard part. Don't give up on the easy part. The easy part. Sarah wanted to laugh at the absurdity. But Rachel was right, they'd come too far to surrender now. The ride home felt different than any journey Sarah had taken before. Her siblings chattered with relief and excitement. Nathaniel rode beside the wagon, quiet but present, and ahead of them, visible on the horizon, their cabin waited. Home. Legally, absolutely theirs. When they pulled into the yard, Ethan jumped down before the wagon fully stopped. I'm checking the fences. Probably need mending after 2 weeks. Ethan, we just got back. I know, but fences don't wait. He grabbed tools from the barn already moving. Sarah recognized it for what it was, a 14-year-old boy processing overwhelming emotions through action. Inside the cabin, everything looked exactly as they'd left it, but somehow different. Like the walls themselves knew they couldn't be taken anymore. Callie immediately started cleaning, sweeping dust that had accumulated. Jamie sat at the table, unusually quiet. You all right, Jamie? Her youngest brother looked up, his 6-year-old face serious. Are we safe now? Really safe? Sarah knelt beside him. Yeah, baby, we're really safe. Mr. Crawford can't take our home. No one can take our home. Not ever again. Jamie launched himself into her arms, crying with relief he'd been holding back for weeks. Sarah held him, rocking slightly, feeling her own tears come. They were safe. After months of terror, of fighting, of not knowing if tomorrow would bring eviction, they were safe. That evening, Nathaniel approached Sarah as she prepared supper. I've been thinking about money, about how to get what you need. We need $375 in 60 days. Unless you can make rainfall gold, I don't see how. What if I sold my horse? Sarah stared at him. That's your only valuable possession. Exactly. Should fetch maybe $200. Good bloodlines, well trained. Nathaniel's voice was matter-of-fact, but Sarah heard what it cost him to offer. It's not enough alone, but it's a start. You need that horse. I need you more. He said it simply, like stating obvious truth. Horse is just property. He stopped, seemed to search for words. You're everything that matters. Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to refuse his sacrifice, but pride was a luxury they couldn't afford. All right, we sell the horse. But Nathaniel, you understand what that means. You'll be tied here to this property to us. No way to leave if you change your mind. Good. I don't want a way to leave. They sold Nathaniel's horse 3 days later to a rancher from Colorado. $220 more than Sarah had hoped. But it still left them $155 short, with 54 days remaining. Sarah took in washing from town, earning pennies that accumulated slowly. Nathaniel hired himself out for day labor, digging wells, mending fences, any work he could find. Ethan trapped rabbits and sold the pelts. Even Callie contributed mending clothes for neighbors in exchange for coins. But the money came too slowly. After 2 weeks, they'd earned another $40. Still over 100 short, with 40 days left. Sarah lay awake nights calculating, recalculating, trying to find solutions that didn't exist. They'd won in court, but might still lose to simple arithmetic. Then Swifthawk appeared with an unexpected offer. I need someone to teach English to Lakota children. Winters are coming, traders won't deal with folks who don't speak their language. You taught before. My mother did. I helped her. Sarah's mind raced. How much does it pay? $2 per week. 10 children, 3 days a week. $2. Not nearly enough, but something. I'll do it. Starts tomorrow. Bring your sister if she wants to help. I'll pay her 50 cents weekly. Callie jumped at the chance. The two of them rode to the trading post 3 days a week, teaching basic English to children who learned faster than Sarah expected. It was exhausting work on top of everything else, but it was income. 30 days left, they'd scraped together $280. Still 95 short. Nathaniel came home one evening face bruised, moving stiffly. Sarah's stomach dropped. What happened? Marcus found me in town. Had words, then fists. Nathaniel touched his split lip gingerly. He said Father's offering a bounty. Anyone who hires me gets blacklisted from Crawford business. That's why work's been scarce lately. Your father's still fighting us. He won't stop until we're broken. That's who he is. Nathaniel sank into a chair with a wince. But Sarah, I got an idea. Dangerous, probably stupid, but it might work. Tell me. There's a horse race next week in Cheyenne. Winner takes $300. I'm a decent rider, and if I can borrow a fast horse. You don't have a horse. You sold yours for us. I know, but Samuel Washington's got a mare fast, good temperament. He might let me ride her if I promise him half the winnings. Sarah wanted to say no, wanted to forbid this risky plan, but they were running out of options. What if you lose? Then we're where we are now, short of money with time running out. But if I win, we're done. Fees paid, filing complete, no more worrying. You could get hurt. I could. But Sarah, we're dying slowly by pennies. Sometimes you got to risk everything to win anything. She recognized her own philosophy reflected back at her. Recognized that Nathaniel was becoming the partner she needed, someone willing to gamble when safe options didn't exist. All right, ask Samuel about his horse. Samuel Washington agreed, but his price was steep, 2/3 of the winnings if Nathaniel won. That left them with only $100 from a victory, still short of what they needed. But it was their best shot. The morning of the race, Nathaniel looked terrified and determined in equal measure. Sarah helped him saddle the mare, checked every buckle twice. Don't die doing this. I'll try my best not to. He tried to smile, but it came out shaky. Sarah, if something happens, nothing's happening. You're riding a race, winning money, coming home. She grabbed his shirt, pulled him down to her height. "You hear me? You're coming home." "Yes, ma'am." He kissed her hard and desperate, then swung into the saddle. Sarah stood with her siblings watching him ride toward town. Callie slipped her hand into Sarah's. "He'll win." "How do you know?" "Because he has to. Because we need him to. Because God wouldn't bring us this far just to let us fail now." Sarah wished she had her sister's faith. All she had was hope mixed with terror. The race started at noon. Results wouldn't reach their property until evening. Sarah worked through the afternoon trying to keep busy, trying not to imagine Nathaniel thrown from a horse trampled dying because she'd let him risk his life for money. Ethan found her in the garden, crying over half-weeded rows. "He'll be all right. You don't know that. I know he loves you. Know he's fighting for us, same way you fought for us. That's got to count for something." Ethan sat beside her in the dirt. "Sarah, I've been thinking. If we can't come up with the money, if we lose the property, it ain't your fault. You did everything possible. It'll feel like my fault. Maybe. But feeling something don't make it true." Her brother's voice carried wisdom beyond his years. "You saved us, Sarah. Even if we lose this place, you saved us by keeping us together. That's what matters." She wanted to believe him. Wanted to think that family mattered more than land. But she remembered her parents' graves, remembered 4 years of building something real, and couldn't shake the feeling that losing the property would mean failing them all. Nathaniel rode into the yard just after sunset. Sarah saw him coming and felt her heart stop. He was riding alone, no wagon with winnings moving slowly like every bone hurt. They'd lost. He'd risked everything, and they'd lost. But then she saw his face, saw the fierce grin splitting his bruised features, and hope flared wild and painful. "We won!" His voice cracked with exhaustion and triumph. "We won, Sarah. $300. Samuel took 200, but we got our 100, combined with what we saved." He swung down from the horse, stumbled, caught himself. "We got enough. We got more than enough." Sarah couldn't speak, couldn't move, just stared at this man who'd sold his horse, fought his father, risked his life, all for her family. Then she was running, crashing into him hard enough to knock them both down. They lay in the dirt, laughing and crying, while her siblings piled on top of them in a tangle of relieved limbs. "We did it," Nathaniel whispered against her hair. "We actually did it. You did it. We did it. Together." He pulled back to look at her. "Sarah Bennett, I got a question I've been waiting to ask." Her heart stuttered. "Nathaniel, will you marry me? I got no money, no property, no prospects beyond working myself to death on your land. But I love you, and I want to build a life with you. A real life with struggles and fights and joy mixed in equal measure." His voice softened. "Will you let me?" Sarah thought about saying yes. Thought about the life they'd build, the challenges they'd face, the love that would sustain them through hardship. But she needed him to understand what he was agreeing to. "You know what you're asking 3 children who ain't yours. A cabin that needs constant repair. Land that barely feeds us. No money, no comfort. Nothing easy ever." "I know. You'll work yourself to exhaustion and probably die young from the strain." "I know. Your father will never forgive you. Your brother will hate you. You'll lose every connection you had." "I know." Nathaniel's hands framed her face. "Sarah, I know all of that. And I'm asking anyway. Because a life with you struggling and fighting and probably failing at most things, that's better than any comfortable life I could have without you." She kissed him, then pouring every yes she couldn't say into the contact. When they broke apart, both were crying. "That's a yes?" Nathaniel asked. "That's a yes." The siblings erupted in cheers. Ethan was grinning. Callie was crying. Jamie was demanding to know what marriage meant, and whether Nathaniel would be his real brother now. "Yes," Nathaniel told the 6-year-old. "I'll be your real brother, and your real pain in the ass when you don't do your chores." Nathaniel Crawford. Sarah tried to sound scandalized, but couldn't stop smiling. Sorry, your real brother who will occasionally annoy you about chores. Better, Jamie considered. Can I call you Papa? The question killed all laughter. Nathaniel went very still, something raw crossing his face. Jamie, I ain't trying to replace your father. I know, but he's gone and you're here, and you take care of us like Papa used to. Jamie's voice was small, hopeful. So can I? Nathaniel looked at Sarah seeking permission. She nodded, throat too tight for words. Yeah, son, you can call me Papa. Jamie launched himself at Nathaniel with such force they both went down again. This time when they landed, it felt like family messy, chaotic, imperfect family, but family nonetheless. They filed the completed homestead claim 3 days later. Isaiah Harrison reviewed every document twice, making sure nothing was missing. When he finally declared it complete, Sarah felt 4 years of fear finally release its grip. You're legal now, absolutely completely legal. No one can touch this land. Harrison shook her hand formally. Congratulations, Miss Bennett. You earned this. Mrs. Crawford soon. Sarah glanced at Nathaniel. We're marrying next month. Then congratulations on that too. Harrison's smile was genuine. I've handled a lot of cases, but yours, this one, mattered. You showed other homesteaders that fighting back works. That's worth more than any legal fee. Word spread fast about Sarah's victory and engagement. Homesteaders stopped by to offer congratulations, to share food and supplies, to celebrate what felt like a collective win. Even Ruth Washington came crying and apologizing. I'm sorry I didn't testify. Sorry I let fear win. You protected your family. That ain't something to apologize for. Sarah hugged her. We all do what we can with what we got. The wedding was planned for May, giving them time to prepare. Nothing fancy, they couldn't afford fancy, just a simple ceremony with friends and family. Father O'Brien would officiate. Rachel Finch would document it for the Gazette. The homesteaders would bring food. But 3 weeks before the ceremony, Clayton Crawford appeared at their cabin. Sarah saw him riding up and grabbed her rifle by instinct. Nathaniel stepped onto the porch, positioning himself between his father and the door. You ain't welcome here. I know, but I'm asking for 5 minutes anyway. Clayton dismounted slowly, hands visible. Please, son, 5 minutes. Nathaniel looked at Sarah. She nodded, though everything in her screamed danger. 5 minutes. Say what you came to say. Clayton approached carefully, hat in his hands. Up close, he looked older than Sarah remembered. Tired. Diminished somehow. I came to apologize. The words hung in shocked silence. Nathaniel's expression went carefully blank. Apologize. For everything. For trying to take Miss Bennett's land. For threatening witnesses. For disowning you. Clayton's voice roughened. For becoming the kind of man my wife would be ashamed of. Why now? Nathaniel's voice was cold. After everything you did, why apologize now? Because I've been thinking about your mother, about what she'd say if she could see what I've become, about Thomas Gray's widow who spit on me in town yesterday and called me a murderer. Clayton's composure cracked slightly. About the fact that I drove away my only decent son, and for what water rights another section of land I don't need. Yes, for exactly that. Nathaniel didn't soften. You destroyed families, Father, ruined lives. You can't apologize that away. I know, but I can stop doing it. Clayton pulled papers from his coat. This is a deed transfer. 200 acres adjoining Miss Bennett's property. It's yours, legal gift, no strings. Consider it a wedding present. Sarah's mind reeled. 200 acres. That would more than double their land, give them room to expand to build real prosperity. Why would you do this? Suspicion colored Nathaniel's voice. Because your mother left me a letter. Told me to read it if I ever lost sight of who I wanted to be. Clayton's hands shook slightly, holding the deed. I read it last week. She said if I ever drove you away through my own greed, I should know I'd failed. Not as a rancher, not as a businessman, as a man. Silence stretched painful and raw. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Clayton continued quietly. I don't deserve it, but I'm asking you to take this deed. Let me do one right thing after so many wrong ones. Nathaniel looked at Sarah. She saw the conflict in his face, the part that wanted his father's approval warring with the part that knew acceptance might mean condoning what had been done. Take it, Sarah said softly. Not because he deserves forgiveness, because we deserve that land. Nathaniel took the deed with reluctant hands. This don't fix what you did. I know. Don't expect me to suddenly welcome you back into my life. I don't. Clayton moved toward his horse, then paused. But Nathaniel, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Your mother would be proud of you. You became the man she hoped for even when I tried to make you something else. He rode away before Nathaniel could respond, leaving them standing in the yard with a deed that changed everything. He's trying, Sarah said carefully. Might be too late, might not be enough, but he's trying. I know. Nathaniel stared at the paper. Don't mean I forgive him. Don't mean you have to, but maybe someday. Maybe, but not today. The wedding happened on a brilliant May morning. Sarah wore a dress Rachel Finch had helped her sew, simple blue cotton, nothing fancy, but it was hers, and it was clean, and it was enough. Her hair was braided with wildflowers Callie had picked at dawn. The ceremony took place outside their cabin with homesteaders gathered to witness. Father O'Brien spoke about love and commitment and the courage it took to build a life together. Nathaniel's hands shook when he slid the ring onto her finger, a simple gold band he'd saved 3 months to afford. I ain't got much to offer, he said during his vows voice, thick with emotion. No wealth, no grand promises. But I swear, I'll work every day to be worthy of you. I'll protect your family like they're mine because they are mine now. I'll build the life you deserve even if it takes my whole life building. Sarah's vows were simpler. I choose you. Every day, in every struggle, I choose you. That's all I got to offer, my choice freely given. Take it or leave it. I'll take it. Nathaniel's smile cracked his careful composure. Today and every day after. When Father O'Brien pronounced them married, the crowd erupted in cheers. Nathaniel kissed her thoroughly inappropriately, long for a public ceremony, and Sarah didn't care at all. The celebration lasted into evening. Food appeared more than Sarah had seen in years. Music started fiddles and guitars, and voices raised in songs that spoke of home and hope and hard-won victories. Children ran wild. Adults danced. For one perfect day, struggle paused, and joy took its place. As sunset painted the sky, gold and red, Sarah found herself standing apart from the celebration, looking at the life they'd built. The cabin that had almost been lost. The land that was absolutely theirs now. The siblings who'd survived against terrible odds. The husband who'd chosen poverty with her over wealth without her. Nathaniel appeared beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. What are you thinking? That we won, against everything we actually won. We did. He pulled her closer. You know what comes next. What? Living. Real living, not just surviving. Building something that lasts. His voice dropped. Having a life worth remembering. Sarah thought about her parents buried behind the cabin. Thought about the legacy they'd left, not wealth or comfort, but land and love and the stubborn belief that fighting for what mattered was worth any cost. They'd be proud, she said quietly. Mama and Papa, they'd be proud of what we built. They'd be proud of you. You're the one who saved this family. We saved it. You, me, Ethan, Callie, Jamie, all of us together. Sarah turned to face him. That's what I'm most proud of. Not the land, not winning in court. That we did it together. Music drifted from the celebration voices raised in a song about home. Their home. Hard-won, absolutely theirs, worth every sacrifice it had taken to keep. Nathaniel kissed her softly, tasting of hope and promise, and the future they'd build together. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Sarah Crawford." The name still felt strange, but Sarah was learning to claim it. Learning to believe in futures that included partnership instead of lonely struggle. "I love you too." They stood together as night fell over Wyoming territory, over their land, over the home they'd fought so desperately to keep. Around them, their family celebrated blood family, and chosen family people who'd stood with them when standing alone would have been easier. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, would bring work and worry and the endless struggle of frontier life. But tonight they'd won. Tonight they had each other, had family, had home. And that was everything. Sarah Bennett Crawford, who'd buried her parents and raised her siblings and fought a cattle baron to keep the land her father had claimed, she'd built something worth having. Not just a homestead. Not just a legal victory. A life. A real, hard-earned, absolutely hers life. And she'd defend it with everything she had for as long as she lived. Because some things were worth losing everything to keep. And home, real home built from sweat and stubbornness and love that refused to quit, that was always worth the fight.